Hi, welcome to today's tutorial. Today's tutorial is about grip equipment. But before we talk about grip equipment, we came out to the ball field and we decided to do a tutorial, a little bit of information on getting a grip on your camera. A lot of people, especially actors in movies, like to hold their camera like this. Some of you may like to hold your camera like this. But if you hold your camera with your left hand like this, fingers on top of the lens, thumb underneath it, you'll find that it's really hard to hold this camera still. Furthermore, your left elbow is floating out in the air here and has nothing that you can press it against like another part of your body. And as a test, just to prove this to yourself, and if you like to hold the camera like this, I'd like you to hold it in your left hand and let go of it with your right. See how long you can hold that camera before it starts to shake. On the other hand, if you were to turn your hand all the way around so that your left thumb was pointing this way, you could put your left hand under the camera and cradle it, and you'd find that you could put your elbow tucked in close to your body. Additionally, if you let go with your right hand like we did before, you'll find that you can hold the camera much steadier for a much longer period of time. Now, I'm not saying this is the way you should hold the camera all the time, but if you want sharper pictures, it's pretty smart to get a good grip on your camera. Now that we've got a grip, let's go in the studio and talk about grip equipment. Now that the baseball game is over, we won, by the way, and you all have a grip on your camera, we're going to be talking about the real topic of today's tutorial, which is grip equipment. I've been writing books for a while, and since I've written my book, Digital Still Life Photography, I've gotten a few letters from various photographers in different parts of the country who actually said that they never knew that some of the equipment that I talk about matter-of-factly, they never even knew it existed. That equipment is called grip equipment. It's equipment that allows you to position lights and flags and scrims where you want them so that they hold in place and then can be easily broken down to be stored away or to have the lighting design of a set changed. When I was a young photographer, I worked in New York City. And whether you work in New York City or LA or Chicago or any big center of photography and commercial photography, you get to see things in sets that you really don't get to see when you live in less sparsely populated parts of the country. One of the nice things about a store like the Set Shop, if you ever get to go there in person, is they have a huge cabinet filled with hundreds of different pieces of equipment, all grip equipment, that you might not even think about, but the minute you see them, you know that you can use them. Since you're not all going to be able to get to the Set Shop, we're going to today talk about some of the pieces that are available. Chances are good some of these things you can make yourself. Some of them, obviously, you can buy, but even if you want a specialized piece of equipment, there's a good chance that what you need already exists. This is a Manfrotto clamp. It's called a super clamp. They were the first people to design it. Originally, they were marketed in the United States by Bogan. This clamp can clamp onto doors. It can clamp onto poles because it has a V, right? But once you clamp the clamp onto something, the question is how do you attach something to the clamp? Well, the way you attach something to the clamp is by using a thing called a stud. That's a stud. And it fits into a hole and has a locking knob that positions it and doesn't allow it to move. studs are made of a whole bunch of different materials. This stud is made of steel. This stud is made of aluminum. The aluminum stud probably weighs about 1/3 of what the same size steel stud weighs. This stud is made of brass. These two mini studs are, one of the mini studs, let me show you it. One of the mini studs has a 1/4 20th screw thread on one side of it, or a 3/8 16th thread on the other side of it. It can screw together with another mini stud and become a longer stud. There are times when you might want to use a brass stud because dissimilar metals don't join on to each other and don't sort of weld themselves together, so they're more easily removable. There are times when you might be screwing a stud into an aluminum threaded hole on a piece of equipment, and brass and aluminum don't mix and they don't lock together so that you can't separate them easily. Also, a steel stud has the ability to strip out the threads on a much softer metal like aluminum. However, if you were going to mount a stud somewhere and put a tripod head on the stud and then put a camera on the tripod head, it would be smart to use a steel stud so that you wouldn't end up with your camera smashing to the floor in case the threaded piece broke off. The question is how could you tell the difference between a steel stud and a chromium plated brass stud or a polished aluminum stud? One way to do that is with a magnet. This is a little kitchen magnet, and as you can see, it sticks to a steel stud, a chrome plated steel stud. But if you take it off and you try to stick it to a brass stud, it doesn't stick. Likewise, it doesn't stick to an aluminum stud, but it'll stick to a steel stud. Now, we know a little bit about studs. Let's talk about what studs can be used for and things we can do with them. Let's say you wanted to put a light on top of this pole. That's relatively simple because there's a 5/8 inch stud here. But let's say that you wanted to put a light lower on the pole. Let's say that you wanted to put it down here, and the light stand couldn't get any lower. You could take a Manfrotto super clamp or a Matthews super clamp and clamp it to this light stand down here, and then you could take a right angle, you could take a stud and put it into the, excuse me, got to loosen it, sorry guys. Then you could loosen the locking screw and press the release button and put the stud into the Manfrotto super clamp. Let's say that once you put this stud in here, you could add a piece. This is made by, this particular one happens to be made by Norman, and it too takes a 5/8 inch stud. You could put this piece in here, and then you could twist that so that you could put another light into this section. What we've just done is I've used I'm just trying to loosen it so it fits in. I've used one Manfrotto super clamp, one Matthews steel stud, one Norman right angle articulating movement piece, a swivel, and then an aluminum stud this way. So you could link all these pieces together to get what you want. Now, it doesn't just stop there. Let's say that you wanted to use a piece of foam board and you wanted to put it up as a flag. Let's say you wanted to put it up as a fill card. Well, this may scare some of you because it's going to look like a medieval torture device. It's basically a giant fork with very sharp tines. But you could take that giant fork with very sharp tines and you could push it into a piece of foam board. It could mount onto a Bogan or a Manfrotto clamp or a Matthews clamp, and you could end up getting this to be positioned exactly where you want it to be. Now, if you wanted to push the fork tines in all the way into the foam board, you could then put a piece of tape here to secure it, and then you could use something like a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet of foam board. You could use a spring clamp like this. Now what's interesting is that this spring clamp, which I think is either Manfrotto or Matthews, has two 5/8 inch studs on it. Let's say you wanted to mount a sheet of foam board somewhere else, and what you have here is a vice grip pliers. And this vice grip pliers could be used to hold a piece of foam board between these two extension arms that are screwed to the vice grip pliers. But if you look carefully, welded to the top of this vice grip pliers is a 5/8 inch stud. You could take this steel stud right here and pick up a Harbor Freight C-clamp and take a steel stud and this Harbor Freight clamp to a local welding shop and have them weld a stud here or anywhere else along the cast iron body of the stud, along the cast iron body of the C-clamp. And that stud would then become a part of your grip equipment that could be used for your setup on the way that you want to do it. Let's say you mounted this on the wall with 6 screws, and then let's say though that instead of just putting a light on it that would only be able to be positioned in one way, you could put this Avenger piece on it, and it's an articulated ball head that's fitting onto a 5/8 inch stud and ending at a 5/8 inch stud with a ball joint in the middle of it, so that you could get this thing to go basically anywhere you wanted it to, pointing in any direction. It's all because of the advantage of equipment that's all designed to take the same size stud. This one would only fit on a light stand this way. And that means that because you put it on a light stand this way, it could take a crossbar. But at the same time, there'd be no way to get a stud into the other side of it. So you could put a crossbar through here to another one of these that's mounted upside down, but that's the end of what this could do. But if you turned around and used, this is made a Manfrotto super clamp. But if you used this super clamp, which is made by Matthews, you could find that you could mount it on the top of a light stand like this. It could take the same crossbar we were talking about, but you could also put a stud in the top of it over here. I'm just loosening the screw so you can see. There's a button here. When you press the button, it's an interlock. It stops once you back out the screw enough, you'll find that if you push the button in, the stud fits into the hole, and then even if the screw is loose, it doesn't fall out. So, this one has a hole at the bottom and a hole at the top, where this one only has a hole in the bottom if it was set up this way. These two pieces of equipment, in reality, are very similar. Let's say you wanted to take a picture from ground level with a tripod, but there's no way that you can get the tripod head down as low as you would like it. You could mount your tripod head over here, taking it off the top of the tripod, and you could mount your camera here. You could turn it sideways and mount it here. You could end up with a camera placed in a position that you can't use a regular tripod for. This is called a grip arm. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to put a tube, a pipe, a light pole through a like-sized hole in these two pieces of steel. And this fits onto the 5/8 inch stud that we've been talking about, or the 5/8 inch stud that's on the top of your light stand. You saw how I mounted a camera and a tripod head onto a Manfrotto super clamp clamped to the lower leg of a tripod, which will give me a relatively low camera position. Manfrotto makes a suction cup. It's a rubber suction cup with a ball joint in the middle of it on a stud, and it takes a 5/8 inch stud. I found that when I use it on a smooth surface, be it a windshield of a car, be it a sheet of plexiglass, be it any smooth surface, even a piece of linoleum, if I wet the edge of the suction cup with a little bit of saliva and I place it onto, right now I'm using a piece of acrylic, and you push in on the blue pump handle, and you keep pushing on the blue pump handle until the red line no longer is shown when you let go of the pump. That means you've reached full suction. Once you've done that, it's just about finished. This now is lifting the entire sheet of acrylic that I have here. But you could put a stud, the 5/8 inch stud, into this ball head, and you could then mount a camera onto this ball head, which would basically allow you to position a camera in a low position, or on a windshield of a car, or the hood of a car, or any smooth surface that doesn't have a granular texture. It's just another part, another tool in the arsenal of grip equipment that you should know about. Right now, I'm standing in the middle, totally surrounded by an 84-inch Sunbuster umbrella by Fotec. It's an umbrella that I use quite often. It gives me a fabulous soft light that really wraps around my subject. The question is, or everybody who works with lights knows, that if we put a single light on this umbrella shaft aimed into this umbrella, it certainly wouldn't cover the wingspan that this umbrella has. It's just too wide to be covered by one light. However, if we took our grip equipment that we've been talking about all night and took a super clamp and mounted it to the umbrella shaft, which is what I'm doing here, and then we took a 5/8 inch piece of grip equipment made by Ross Lowell called the Lowell Link, which has two studs that can go into either side and a stud on top and bottom. We will put one of the studs into here. We then could take two battery-powered lights, two LED panel lights, two hot quartz video lights, or two AC-powered flash units. We could even take a third light and put it up here because it also has a 5/8 inch stud in it. And we could fill this entire umbrella with beautiful light. Once you learn about grip equipment and all the things that it can do, it can turn your studio panic situations into studio pleasure situations. I hope you learned something tonight, and I hope you find this interesting and informative and useful. Have a great night, and we'll see you again.